The city looked different at dawn, softer, quieter, as if the world itself paused to breathe, while the first light brushed the glass towers awake. And somewhere behind those shimmering walls lived a girl whose life had been written long before she ever learned how to speak. Her name was Elena Moretti. To the world, she was the daughter of Alessandro Moretti, one of the wealthiest men in the country, a man whose business empire stretched through skylines and whispers alike. She grew up in penthouses high above the clouds, her days measured in private tutors, charity dinners, and security guards who never drifted far from her shadow. Yet underneath all the diamonds and carefully crafted perfection, something remained painfully absent, something she couldn't name, yet felt with every quiet breath. A hollow stillness, a yearning. Every morning, Elena stepped out onto the balcony of her 32nd floor penthouse and watched life unfold far below. Small cafes lifting their shutters, buses filling with tired dreamers, and the warmth of ordinary living rising from streets she had never touched. She longed for that world more than she ever dared to admit, and fate, with its unpredictable timing, was preparing to open a door she never knew existed. Because miles away, at the very edge of the same city, a young man named Arav woke up to a morning nothing like hers. There were no marble floors in his room, no panoramic skyline greeting him, only cracked walls, a flickering fan, and a mother who slept lightly, a habit carved by too many years of worry. Arav tightened the laces of his worn-out shoes, slung his faded backpack over his shoulder, and kissed his mother's forehead before leaving for work. As always, he whispered the promise he wished so hard to keep. "Soon, Ma, much better days are coming." He didn't know how, he didn't know when, but hope was the single thing poverty had never taken from him. He boarded a crowded bus, squeezed between workers heading towards scattered parts of the city. His stop was the construction site where he labored each day, the Moretti Group's newest luxury hotel. Elena and Arav lived in two separate worlds, two circles that weren't meant to touch. But destiny doesn't obey boundaries. That morning, Elena felt restless in a way she couldn't explain. After hours of persistent pleading, she finally convinced her father to let her volunteer quietly, without the Moretti name, without security following her, without the suffocating cloud of supervision. She wanted to see life for herself, even if just for a single morning. So she dressed simply, jeans, a white shirt, hair tied back, and slipped out through the building's rear entrance before anyone noticed. The sun had fully risen by then, gilding the streets with soft warmth. As Elena walked through neighborhoods she'd only ever seen from balconies, everything felt different. The smell of fresh bread drifting from a corner bakery, the echoes of children chasing a football across the pavement, the noisy rush of scooters weaving through narrow lanes. Every detail felt vivid and alive. And she felt alive with them. But as she turned onto a quieter street, fate changed its direction, silently, suddenly. A crowd had begun to form near the construction site, and she heard a shout, sharp, frantic, followed by the cracking sound of metal buckling. A wooden beam had slipped loose. In the breath that followed, everything slowed. Before she even understood what was happening, she saw a man dart forward, shoving another worker out of the way. The beam grazed his shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground, breathless and stunned. People rushed toward him. Someone yelled for help. Someone murmured, "That boy's always risking himself for others." Elena froze where she stood. The injured man, covered in dust, breathing shallowly, fighting the pain, was Arav. But she didn't know his name yet. She only knew that something inside her shifted, something deep, unfamiliar, impossible to ignore. She stepped toward him without even realizing she had moved. Arav looked up, and for a heartbeat, the noise of the world faded. Dust hung in the air like drifting stars. His eyes met hers, warm, startled, exhausted from too many battles life had forced him to fight. She knelt beside him, voice trembling with concern. "Are you okay?" Arav tried to sit up, wincing. I'm fine, don't worry. He spoke softly, almost embarrassed, as if the pain didn't belong to him alone, but to everyone around him. But Elena saw the blood spreading across his shirt. You're not fine, she whispered. For her, it was a moment that shook the foundation of her sheltered world, a moment that dragged her out of a life built on polished surfaces and into a reality she had only watched from afar. For him, it was simply another day he survived, until he saw her, the rich girl with sorrow hidden behind her eyes, the girl looking at him as if he mattered. And although he didn't understand it, something inside him shifted too. The workers helped Arav to his feet, yet Elena stayed beside him until the ambulance arrived, an experience she'd only seen in television dramas, never lived. She insisted on riding with him, even when he whispered, "You don't need to." But she wanted to, not because she knew him, not because she had any reason to care, but because something in his eyes asked a silent question, and something in her heart whispered the answer. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that destiny had quietly rearranged everything in that brief moment. Because love often begins in the most unexpected places. And for Elena and Arav, this was only the beginning. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and worry. Fluorescent lights hummed quietly above as nurses moved like practiced shadows along the corridor. Machines beeped in soft, steady rhythms, each sound marking a heartbeat, a breath, a fragile life in motion. Elena sat on the plastic chair outside the examination room, her hands loosely clasped together, as if she were praying without knowing how. Dust still clung to her sleeves. A faint streak of dried blood, his blood, stained the cuff of her white shirt. She stared at it for a long time. It didn't scare her. It grounded her. Inside that small room, Arav sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulder bandaged, his shirt torn at the seam. A faint bruise was forming along his collarbone. The doctor spoke to him calmly, explaining that he was lucky. No broken bones, just a deep tissue injury and a few days of pain. Lucky. Arav didn't feel lucky. He felt watched. Not by the doctor, not by the nurses, by the girl outside. He'd caught glimpses of her through the half-open door, the way she sat upright, the way her eyes followed every movement of the staff, the way her fingers trembled when they thought no one was looking. He wondered who she was. Not because she was clearly from a different world. That part was obvious. Her clothes, her posture, the careful softness in her voice. She didn't belong near construction sites and crumbling scaffolding. But because she stayed, most people would have walked away once the ambulance doors closed. Most people would have moved on with their day. She didn't. The doctor stepped out, giving Elena a reassuring nod. He's fine, just needs rest. You can see him if you'd like. She stood slowly, as if her body needed a moment to remember how to move. Her heart beat a little faster as she pushed the door open. He looked up. For a moment, they just observed each other. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the kind that doesn't come from one accident, but from years of carrying too much. He saw the concern in hers, the kind that didn't seem rehearsed or polite, but real. You stayed, he said quietly, more as a statement than a question. Elena nodded. I wanted to make sure you were okay. He gave a small, lopsided smile. I'm okay. They fixed me before I could start pretending. A tiny laugh escaped her, soft, unexpected. It felt strange, laughing in a hospital room, but somehow it didn't feel wrong. She took a step closer. Does it hurt? Only when I move, he replied, then added, or breathe, or exist. This time she laughed for real, and the sound filled the tiny room with something warm. His smile deepened, as if he had won a small, quiet victory. But beneath the lightness, there was a deeper weight neither of them addressed. He had risked his life for someone else. She wasn't used to seeing that up close. Do you have someone we can call? She asked gently. Family? Friends? He shook his head. My mother worries enough. If she hears I was in an accident, she'll stop sleeping completely. I'll tell her later, when it sounds boring. Elena studied his face, the sincerity in his words. This wasn't bravado. It was protection. the kind that poor children wrapped around their parents like invisible shields. He noticed she hadn't mentioned anyone for herself either. "Did you come alone?" he asked. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Yes. He didn't know that for the first time in her life, she had moved without a driver, without security, without a carefully curated plan. She had walked into a different world and crashed into his. "What's your name?" she asked. "Arav," he said. "And yours?" There was a brief pause. She knew that names had weight. Her last name, especially, could change the air in any room. "Elena," she said finally. "Just Elena." He waited, expecting more. A surname, a clue, an anchor. But she offered nothing else, and he didn't push. Somewhere inside him, an instinct whispered that she was hiding something. Not in a dangerous way, in a fragile way, like a secret she wasn't ready to share. They spoke for a little while longer, about simple things. He asked why she was there. She said she was just passing by. She asked if he had always worked on construction sites. He told her about his part-time jobs, his night classes in engineering, his dream of one day designing the kind of buildings he now only helped build. "You want to be an engineer?" she said, eyes brightening. "I will be," he corrected gently. "Someday." He said it with a certainty that made her chest tighten. She had met men with fortunes, power, and influence, but very few spoke with this quiet, stubborn confidence. It drew her in. As visiting hours ticked away, a nurse came in to adjust his IV and reminded Elena that she had to leave soon. Something inside her resisted. She didn't want this to be the first and last time they crossed paths. "Will you be okay going home?" she asked softly. "I mean, do you have someone to pick you up?" "I'll manage," he said. "I always do." She nodded, but her eyes betrayed a different emotion, a mix of reluctance and concern. She pulled a small card from her bag. It had no logo, no title, just a first name and a phone number she rarely gave to anyone. She placed it on the side table. "In case you need anything, call me." He looked at the card and then back at her, surprised. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," she replied. "You risked your life for someone you didn't know either." Silence lingered between them, charged and quiet. She turned to leave, her heart strangely heavy. At the door, she paused, glanced back once more, and their eyes met one last time for the day. He lifted his hand slightly, a small wave, nothing dramatic. But something in that simple motion felt like a promise. She walked out. He watched her go, and neither of them knew. This wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of everything. Days passed. To Arav, life returned to its usual rhythm, or at least, it pretended to. His shoulder ached whenever he lifted too much weight, but he kept working. The bills didn't know how to be patient. Rent didn't wait for pain to fade. He tucked the small card into his wallet where it lay like a quiet question. He never called. Not because he didn't want to, but because he wasn't used to reaching out for help, especially from someone who clearly came from a world that had never stood in line for secondhand dreams. Yet every night, as he emptied his pockets, the edge of that card brushed his fingers, a reminder of the girl with sad eyes and soft laughter. Elena, on the other hand, found herself lost in thought at the most unusual moments. During family dinners, while her father discussed new investments, mergers, and board meetings, her mind drifted back to the small hospital room, to the boy who dared to say, "I will be an engineer someday," with nothing but faith as his collateral. Her father's voice often sounded like background noise now, a constant, controlled thunder. "Elena, are you listening?" he would ask. She would blink, rearrange her expression, and nod politely. "Yes, Papa." But her heart was somewhere else. One evening, she stood at her balcony again, the same view of the city lights stretching endlessly below. But now the streets no longer looked like a blur. Somewhere in that maze, she knew, Arav was walking home after a long day, carrying tired bones and unbroken dreams. She wondered what his neighborhood looked like, what his room felt like, how his mother smiled when she saw him come home safe. Her world suddenly seemed the incomplete. She picked up her phone, stared at it for a long moment, then did something she rarely did. She dialed a number that wasn't pre-approved, pre-arranged, or pre-expected. The call rang once, twice, a third time. Arav had just finished washing the dinner dishes, his hands still damp, when his old phone lit up on the table. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" His voice carried a mix of curiosity and caution. There was a brief pause on the other end, followed by a soft intake of breath. "Hi, it's Elena." The way she said her name, gentle and unsure, made his shoulders relax a little. A small smile touched his lips. "I was starting to think you were just a very specific hallucination." She laughed softly. "I was starting to think you'd never use the card." "I didn't," he said. "You did." That detail made something warm flicker in her chest. They spoke for a long time that night, not about money or status or accidents, but about little things. She asked him about his favorite place in the city. He spoke about a small bridge near the old part of town, where the river caught the sunset in such a way that it made everything look golden for a few brief minutes each evening. She confessed she had never been there. "Then you should see it," he said simply. "Everyone should see it at least once." Her world had always revolved around rooftop restaurants and private gardens. Bridges and rivers belonged to postcards, not real life. Yet the way he described it made it sound more magical than any place she'd ever been. "You talk about it like it's sacred," she whispered. "Maybe it is," he replied. "Sometimes the only holy thing we have is a moment that looks like hope." His words lingered in her mind long after they ended the call. That night, she couldn't sleep. And by the time dawn began to touch the sky again, she had already decided something. She wanted to see that world. With him. A few days later, under a sky painted with streaks of orange and pink, Elena stood near the old bridge. She had told her driver she was meeting a friend and asked him to drop her a few streets away. From there, she walked. Her heart beat faster with each step, not from fear, but anticipation. Arav was already there, leaning against the railing, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. The fading light traced gentle lines across his face, making him look softer, younger, and yet somehow stronger. He saw her before she saw him. For a moment, he studied the way she walked, carefully, like she was afraid to disturb the ground beneath her. Her clothes were simple again, yet there was something undeniably different about her, something no outfit could hide. She approached, slightly out of breath, though she hadn't walked that far. "You came," he said quietly. "Of course I came," she replied. "You made it sound like the universe ends here every evening." He smiled. "Not ends, just pauses." They stood side by side, their arms almost, but not quite, touching. Below them, the river flowed steadily, carrying pieces of the city's reflection along its surface. For a while, they didn't speak. They didn't need to. The sky did the talking, melting from gold to soft pink, then to deep blue, as the first stars tried to find their place. "Do you come here often?" she asked. "Whenever I need to remember why I'm doing all this," he said. "Work, study, surviving. It's easy to forget there's more to life than bills and bruises." "And does this place help you remember?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes, because for a few minutes, everything looks possible." She turned her head to look at him, the last of the sunlight catching in her eyes. "And what is it you want to be possible, Arav?" He exhaled slowly, his breath a soft cloud in the cooling air. "I want my mother to never worry about rent again," he said. "I want to build a house where the ceiling doesn't leak when it rains. I want to design buildings that don't cut corners on safety, so people don't die trying to earn their living." He paused. "And maybe, one day, I want to live a life where I can choose what I do, not what I have to do." There was something raw and honest in his voice that made her throat tighten. "You will," she said softly. "I can feel it." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as if he were trying to understand what kind of person stood here. Rich, fragile, strong, hopeful, and believed in his future more easily than he did some days. "Why do you care?" he asked gently. The question wasn't harsh. It was genuinely curious. She swallowed, turning her gaze back to the river. "Because you're everything I'm not," she thought. "Because you fight for every step, while my path was laid out for me. Because when I look at you, I see the life I never got to live." Out loud, she said, "Because I like who you are when you talk about your dreams." The silence that followed was heavy and beautiful. He felt something shift inside him, a quiet pull, a dangerous one. He had always been careful with lines, the invisible ones that separated rich and poor. Powerful and powerless, dreamers and survivors. But with her, the lines began to blur. "You're strange," he murmured eventually, a faint smile on his lips. She laughed. "You say that like it's a compliment." "It is," he said. The sound of their shared laughter rose gently into the evening air, weaving itself into the sounds of the city. For a while, they forgot who they were supposed to be. They were not a billionaire's daughter and a poor construction worker. They were just two people on a bridge, watching the sun surrender to the night, holding on to a moment that felt like hope. But destiny is rarely kind when it realizes two worlds are trying to meet. And as the city lights flickered to life, casting reflections across the water, something else quietly awakened in the shadows of their lives. A name, a surname, a powerful man about to discover a truth he would never accept. Because while Elena and Arav stood on that bridge, falling slowly, helplessly into something that looked a lot like love, her father was signing documents related to the very construction site where Arav worked. And soon, their worlds wouldn't just touch, they would collide. Hard. The weeks that followed felt like pieces of a secret world stitched together with quiet moments. Sometimes they met on the old bridge, sometimes in small corner cafes that smelled of roasted beans and late-night poetry. Sometimes they walked along crowded markets, blending into a life neither of them fully belonged to. Their world was fragile, but beautiful. Arav learned that Elena laughed with her whole heart, softly tilting her head the way children do when they trust completely. Elena learned that Arav spoke about hope as if it were a tangible thing, something he could hold, repair, protect. And for a while, both forgot the weight of their real worlds. But destiny listens. Destiny waits. And destiny intervenes exactly when it hurts the most. It happened on a Friday evening. The city was alive with its usual glow, cars humming like restless insects. Neon lights flickering across puddles left by an afternoon shower. Elena stepped into the Moretti mansion, humming softly, her cheeks warm from the memory of the way Arav had looked at her earlier that day. She didn't see her father standing near the staircase. She didn't see the storm already brewing in his eyes. Elena. His voice was calm, too calm. She turned. "Papa, I didn't see you there." Alessandro Moretti studied her carefully, the way her hair was slightly windblown, the faint blush on her face, the happiness she couldn't hide no matter how hard she tried. "Where have you been?" he asked. "Just out," she replied gently. "With who?" Her breath caught. Her father sensed it, the hesitation, and his expression shifted from suspicion to cold certainty. "Elena, tell me the truth." She remained silent. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a file, and dropped it on the marble table. It spilled open, photographs sliding across the polished surface. Photographs of her, photographs of Arav, photographs of them together. At the bridge, at the cafe, walking down a quiet street. Her heart stopped. "How? Ah," she whispered. "Did you forget, Elena?" her father said coldly. "You're a Moretti. There are eyes everywhere." She felt something inside her collapse, a childhood truth brushing against the sharp edge of adult reality. You had me followed, she breathed. I protected you, he corrected. From what you don't understand yet. Her fingers trembled as she gathered the photos, seeing her world captured through a stranger's lens. Her father stepped closer, his voice dropping into steel. That boy, he said, as if the word itself was dirt, works at my construction site, a laborer, a nobody. Papa, he is using you. No, he's not, she whispered fiercely. Her father ignored her, his voice rising slowly. You will never see him again. Do you understand me? Her heart clenched, as if something sharp had pierced it. No, she whispered. I won't stop seeing him. And for the first time in her life, she defied him. Alessandro Moretti had heard defiance in boardrooms. Legal battles, business rivalries, but never in his own home. His face hardened. You think you love him, he said, but you don't understand what you're risking. I understand perfectly, she replied. I felt more alive in the past weeks than in the last 22 years. Her father stared at her, stunned. This wasn't the quiet, obedient Elena he'd raised inside a golden cage. This was the Elena destiny had reshaped. He said one final sentence, the kind that didn't sound like anger, but like a verdict. If you walk out that door to see him again, you are no longer my daughter. Her breath trembled, her soul trembled, but her feet didn't. She walked, and he watched, quietly realizing he was no longer in control. Arav was waiting by the bridge, leaning on the railing, watching the faint shimmer of the water. It was their usual place, their safe place, the only place that felt untouched by the world. He saw her approaching, but something was wrong. Her steps were fast, almost frantic. Her eyes were shining, not with happiness, but with fear. Elena, what happened? She reached him and threw her arms around him, holding on as if she feared the world would tear them apart right there. Arav, my father knows. Her voice broke. He knows everything. He froze. How? He asked. He had us followed, photographed, watched. Arav closed his eyes. He should have expected this. He should have been more careful. He knew her world was not the kind that tolerated crossing boundaries. What did he say? He whispered. She looked at him, her eyes shaking. He wants me to stop seeing you, forever. A long silence followed, so long the river seemed to stop moving. Arav finally spoke, his voice tight. He's right, in a way. Her heart cracked. What? Elena, your world and mine, they don't mix. Not peacefully, not easily. She grabbed his hands, holding them to her chest. Don't say that. Don't let him win. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to hold on to her and fight everything else. But he also knew the weight of reality. Elena, your father can ruin my life with one phone call, he said quietly. He owns the company I work for. He controls everything around me. And I don't care, she cried. I don't want a life filled with walls and rules and loneliness. I want more. I want you. His resolve trembled. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Please don't leave me. He pulled her into his arms and held her tightly, his hand in her hair, her heartbeat pressed against his chest. In that moment, he silently promised himself he would fight for her. But fate had different plans, because as they embraced on the quiet bridge, they were not alone. A black car stopped at the edge of the street. The back door opened, and her father stepped out. What a touching scene, Alessandro Moretti said, his voice slicing through the night. Elena spun around, panic flooding her face. Papa, please. But he brushed past her, his eyes locked on Arav. You, he said coldly. Come with me. Arav stood straight, jaw tight, refusing to look intimidated. I'm not going anywhere with you. Her father smiled, the kind of smile that made grown men tremble. Oh, yes, you are. 4 security guards stepped out of the car. Elena's breath shattered. Papa, stop, you can't. He held up one hand, silencing her. Arav, he said quietly, you have 2 choices. You get in the car, or I make one phone call, and you lose everything. Arav's heart pounded. His job, his home, his mother's medication, his entire life depended on that one man. Elena clutched Arav's hand. Her father watched, his voice dripping with disdain. You think she'll still want you when you're unemployed, homeless, unable to feed yourself, or your mother? Papa, Elena sobbed. Arav swallowed hard, every muscle in his body tense. He couldn't risk losing everything. He couldn't let his mother suffer because of him. He couldn't let Elena destroy her life, fighting a war she couldn't win. He exhaled slowly, painfully. Then he let go of Elena's hand. Her eyes widened. Arav, no, please, no. He forced a small smile, the kind that shattered even as it formed. It's okay, he whispered. I'll go. No, she cried, grabbing his arm. Arav, please don't do this, please. Her father's guards moved closer. Arav stepped back from her embrace, his eyes burning with 1,000 unspoken words. Elena, he said softly, your father is right. Her world crumbled. What are you talking about? His voice shook, but he tried to mask it. We come from different worlds. Your life. It's not meant for someone like me. Don't say that, she sobbed. Please don't say that. He stepped back again. Goodbye, Elena. Her knees buckled. Her father watched, satisfied. The guards escorted Arav toward the car. Elena tried to run after him, desperate, broken, but her father held her back, his grip firm. Let him go, Alessandro whispered. She screamed his name until her voice shattered. Arav! The car door closed. The engine started. The black car drove away into the night, and on that old bridge, their sacred place, Elena collapsed to the ground, sobbing into her trembling hands. Her world had shattered, and Arav's world was about to burn even further. That night, Arav was dropped at the construction site, empty, silent, cold under harsh floodlights. Her father stepped out of the car and addressed him like a business transaction. You will resign first thing tomorrow, quietly, no noise, no drama. Arav stared at him, breath ragged. And if I don't, then I'll destroy you, Alessandro said simply. And your mother. Arav felt his blood freeze. Her father stepped closer. You will stay away from Elena Moretti, forever. You will never call her, never meet her, never stand near her again. Arav looked down, defeated, and her father delivered the final blow. She will forget you. Girls like her always do. The next morning, Arav resigned. By evening, the eviction notice appeared on his door. His mother cried silently, not knowing why everything was falling apart at once. Arav took the blame for all of it. He never told her the truth. And somewhere across the city, Elena lay in her bed, staring at her phone, waiting for a message that would never come. A message that had been killed before it was ever sent. Her love story hadn't ended. It had been stolen. It arrived like a cold stranger, slipping through the curtains, touching Elena's face with a muted light she couldn't feel. Her eyes were swollen, her pillow stained with tears that had dried through the night. She barely slept. Her thoughts kept circling a single name. Arav. She replayed the moment he let go of her hand, the way his voice broke when he said goodbye, the look in his eyes that didn't match his words. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't indifference. It was pain. Raw, forced, unnatural. And she knew, deep in her bones, he didn't walk away by choice. Her father knocked once before entering her room. She didn't turn to look at him. Elena, he said, his tone carefully controlled. You'll understand one day that this was necessary. She kept staring at the window, her voice quiet but sharp. You broke him. You broke me. I protected you, he said firmly. She turned slowly, her eyes cold. No. You protected your pride. They held each other's gaze. Two worlds in war. Her father sighed heavily. Everything I do is for your future. She whispered, a future without choice isn't a future, Papa. He looked away, unwilling or perhaps unable to admit that he was losing his daughter in ways he never anticipated. "Elena, this conversation is over," he said, and left the room. But it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Days passed, then a week, then two. Arav's silence was louder than any words he could have spoken. Every evening, Elena returned to the old bridge, waiting, hoping, praying he might come. The river kept flowing. The sunset still painted the sky gold, but the place felt empty without him. She went to the cafe they loved, a little bell chiming as she walked inside. The barista recognized her and smiled. "Haven't seen your friend lately," he said casually. "The guy with the tired eyes and good manners. Everything okay?" Her throat tightened. She forced a smile. "I'm not sure." At night she scrolled through her messages, all unsent, all drafted in the quiet hours when hope felt stronger than fear. "Where are you? Please talk to me. Let me see you. Let me explain. I miss you." She never sent any of them, not because she didn't want to, but because his number was disconnected. It felt deliberate, painfully deliberate. Still, she wasn't ready to give up. She needed answers, not for closure, but for truth. So one morning, Elena made a decision that surprised even her. She went to the Moretti construction site. Not as a billionaire's daughter, not as someone demanding status, but as a girl looking for the boy who changed her life. The supervisor recognized her immediately, standing up straighter. "Ms. Moretti, if you'd told us you were coming, we would have." She cut him off gently. "I'm looking for someone. He worked here. His name is Arav." The man's expression shifted, something between discomfort and fear. I'm sorry. Arav resigned weeks ago." "I know," she said quietly. "But why?" He hesitated, eyes darting nervously toward the offices. "Please," she whispered, "just tell me the truth." The supervisor swallowed, hard. Then he whispered it, almost too soft to hear. "Your father visited him that night." Elena's breath caught. The man continued. "He told Arav to leave, not just the company, but your life." A harsh breath escaped her, part shock, part heartbreak. "And he listened?" The supervisor nodded slowly. "He didn't have a choice, miss. Sometimes survival demands silence." She closed her eyes, the truth crashing down like cold rain. Her father had done it. He had ripped their world apart. He had forced Arav to disappear. She took a step back, breath trembling, and whispered, "Where does he live?" The man hesitated again. "I shouldn't." "It's okay," she said softly. "I'll find him myself." It took her 3 hours, 2 wrong turns, and a walk through narrow streets she had never seen before. Streets with peeling paint, old bicycles leaned against cracked walls, and life happening in ways she'd only watched from afar. Finally, she found the small building, a rusted metal staircase, clothes drying on a line, old newspaper tucked under a door. Her heart pounded. Arav lived here. This was his world, his breath, his hope. She knocked gently on the door that matched the address. An older woman opened it, Arav's mother. Her face, kind, tired, beautiful in its honesty. Elena recognized her instantly from the way Arav described her. "Hello," Elena whispered. "My name is—" "I know who you are," the woman said softly. Elena froze. The woman stepped aside slightly, her expression not unkind, only sad. "Arav told me everything." Tears stung Elena's eyes. "Where is he? Please, I need to see him. I need to talk to him." The woman hesitated, then said something that struck Elena like a blow. "He's gone." Elena's breath broke. "Gone?" "He left 2 days after he resigned," the mother said. "Packed his things, said he couldn't stay here anymore, said he didn't want his problems to become mine." She paused, lowering her gaze. "And he didn't want to make your life harder than it already was." Elena covered her mouth as her heart shattered all over again. "Did he say where he was going?" she whispered between trembling breaths. "No," the woman replied, "but he left a letter." Elena's heart clenched. "For me?" she asked. "For himself," the mother said. But maybe it's meant for you too. She disappeared inside for a moment, then returned with a small, folded piece of paper, creased from being opened many times. Elena held it carefully, her hands shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. The woman gave her a sad smile. "He loved you. That much I know." Elena's chest tightened painfully. "And I loved him." The woman nodded, eyes softening. "Then maybe fate isn't finished with the two of you yet." Elena sat on the old staircase outside the small building, the letter trembling in her hands. She unfolded it slowly, every crease holding a piece of the boy she loved. Inside, the handwriting was neat, patient, painfully hopeful. "Elena, if you ever find this, it means destiny is kinder than I thought. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because your father made me choose between my life and your happiness. And I choose your happiness. You deserve a world full of light, not a world full of consequences meant for me. I will always be grateful for the bridge, the sunset, the laughter. You made me believe in things I had no right to believe in. I hope you find someone who can stand beside you without fear, someone worthy of your world. And if fate is ever kind, maybe our worlds will meet again. Until then, I will love you quietly, from far away, Arav." A sob escaped her, deep, broken, aching. She held the letter to her chest. He didn't abandon her. He didn't stop loving her. He walked away because he believed she deserved better. But he never understood. He was the better she wanted. The rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, soaking the paper, her hair, her trembling hands. But she didn't move. She let the rain fall like truth from the sky. She let it wash away every lie her father told. She let it remind her of the one fact that mattered. She wasn't done fighting. Not for love, not for truth, not for him. Days passed like pages carried by the wind, then weeks, then months. Yet the ache in Elena's chest did not soften. It settled deeper, like a quiet, permanent echo. She returned to the bridge often, sometimes at sunset, sometimes at dawn, sometimes on nights when the city felt too loud and her heart felt too silent. The river never spoke, but it always listened. And every time she stood there, she felt him, not beside her, but within her. Like a promise the universe hadn't forgotten. Her footsteps echoed through long corridors in ways they never had before, as if the walls knew she was no longer the obedient daughter they had shaped. Her father watched her quietly, as though waiting for her to break, to surrender, to return to the life he had written for her. But she didn't break. She didn't bend. She didn't surrender. Elena began volunteering at community centers across the city, tutoring children in poor neighborhoods, helping organize charity drives, speaking with families whose lives were carved by struggle and hope. It was not guilt that drove her. It was understanding. Understanding him. Understanding herself. Understanding the distance between their worlds and the bridges that could be built if people tried. And slowly, silently, she grew into someone stronger than her father ever imagined, someone he could no longer control through fear. One evening, she approached him in his study. "Papa," she said softly, "I forgive you." He looked up, startled. "But I will never forget what you did," she continued, "and I will never let anyone make my choices again." Her father's expression shifted, not anger, but something closer to regret. "Elena," he whispered, "I only wanted to protect you." "I know," she replied, "but love isn't protection if it destroys the thing it claims to protect." His eyes lowered. It was the closest they had ever come to understanding each other. Almost a year had passed when Elena received an unexpected message, a number she didn't know, a name she recognized instantly. Arav. Her heart stopped, her breath vanished. She opened the message with trembling hands. "Elena, I'm back in the city. I understand if your life has moved on, but if you are on the bridge today, I will know destiny meant what it promised." She reread the message 3 times. Then she ran, through streets bathed in golden dusk, past crowds and traffic and memories. her breaths shaky, her heart pounding with the force of 1,000 unsaid words. She reached the old bridge just as the sun began to sink, the sky painted in soft gold, just like the first time. And he was there, leaning on the railing, hands in his pockets. The same tired eyes, but no longer defeated. Older, stronger, different, yet exactly the same. Arav turned the moment he felt her presence. Elena froze. He froze. The world paused. The river, the sky, even the wind. He whispered her name first. Elena. Her eyes filled instantly. "You came back." "I had to," he said. "I left too many things unfinished." She took one slow step toward him, then another. Then she didn't walk at all. She ran. He caught her in his arms with a breath that sounded like relief and breaking and healing all at once. She held him with a year's worth of longing, grief, and hope. She cried into his shoulder. He buried his face in her hair. Neither spoke for a long time. Because sometimes love doesn't need words, just presence, just truth, just a heartbeat finding its missing rhythm. When their breaths finally steadied, Arav pulled back slightly. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for leaving, for staying silent, for everything." Elena shook her head. "No, don't apologize. You did what you thought you had to, but I didn't stop loving you, not for a single day." Arav's eyes softened, his voice trembling. "I didn't stop loving you either. I tried. I failed." They both laughed, a small, broken, beautiful laugh. He held her face gently, his thumb brushing the tears on her cheeks. "Elena," he said quietly, "I'm not afraid anymore. Not of your father, not of your world, not of mine." She leaned into his touch. "And I'm not afraid of losing you ever again." The wind brushed past them. The sky dimmed into a soft, starry blue. The river shimmered like a path made of light. It felt like the universe had opened its arms. They stood together on the bridge, their bridge, watching the first stars wake. Arav intertwined his fingers with hers. "What happens now?" he asked softly. Elena looked at him the way dawn looks at darkness, with certainty. "Now," she whispered, "we write our own story. Not your father's, not society's, ours." Arav breathed out slowly, as though letting go of every shard of the past. "And if the world tries to pull us apart again?" he asked. She smiled, soft, fearless, unshakable. "Then we hold on tighter." The river carried their reflection, two silhouettes standing side by side, unbroken, reunited, reborn. And as the night deepened around them, Elena rested her head on Arav's shoulder. He whispered, "I never thought destiny would give us another chance." She closed her eyes, a peaceful smile forming. "Destiny," she murmured, "only waits for the brave."